Entonces me autopresento en español. Mi nombre es Guillermo Pascual, de la Universidad de Cádiz. Y bueno, dado que nos encontramos en una de las delegaciones del Instituto Cervantes, pues permitan que estas primeras palabras de agradecimiento sean en español y vayan dirigidas tanto al propio Instituto como a la Embajada Española en Grecia por haber tenido pues, la cordialidad de invitarme a dar a conocer las investigaciones que desarrollo en Grecia. Como pueden ver, en el título de mi conferencia he querido incorporar a Margarita Salas, la investigadora que da nombre a la beca que permite desarrollar mi trabajo. Valga, pues, para homenajear a tan ilustre científica española. Okay, thank you. Well, the title of my presentation, aside from bringing forward the main aspect of my research, also aims at highlighting that this research is being made possible thanks to the University of Cádiz in the framework of the Margarita Salas program of the Ministry of Universities of the Spanish government, founded by the European Union Next Generation EU. In order to develop my research project in Greece, I have been warmly welcomed by the Institute of Historical Research, an institution that is integrated in the National Hellenic Research Foundation, and by the amphorae and archaeological museums of Epirus. I thank them all for their collaborations. Briefly, I want to show you a table of the most important historical episodes related to the Epirus. We have to bear them in mind in order to contextualize the archaeological remains or the amphoras that we are going to talk about. As you can see, there are some specific dates which from difference would be distinguished regarding the amphora imports. This research is the culmination of a process that lasted several years of collaboration with the archaeological museums of Epirus. This collaboration allowed me to perceive and propose the development of new research in this region. Currently, there is a gap in the knowledge of the circulation of transport amphora in the Ionian Sea during the 2nd and 1st centuries BC, centuries in which the conquest of the Roman army inexorably passed the Roman Republic towards the empire. Particularly in northwestern Greece, this aspect of the amphoras we are going to talk about this trade is little known. My investigation is circumscribed to the territory of the present-day Epirus. In this, it is therefore based on the revision of the transport amphora of the 2nd and the 1st centuries BC that are stored in the archaeological museums of the region of Epirus. In order to identify those that could provide some type of information related to my research topic, I firstly carried out a selective study of the most significant archaeological sites in this region. I have recently started the second phase of my research, which involves the review, inventory, photography, and drawing of the transport amphora originated for the selected sites. This coming January 1st, will have complete the first year of my research, so I'm more or less in an initial phase of it. With the help and administrative support of the amphorae of Ioannina and Thesprotia, thus far I have able to get access to the materials stored in the respective museums. At present, I'm working on this while my permit requests for access to the materials from the districts of Preveza and Arta are being resolved. In continuation, I will present my preliminary results aiming to highlight the main points of discussion of my research. I will start my presentation from the northeastern part of Epirus, the prefecture of Ioannina, where my research has focused on 4 sites with a different functions, but that have provided context of similar chronology. The first site is Episcopi, a farmstead located in the southern part of the Ioannina Basin that provides dates of the first quarter of the 1st century BC. I have already reviewed and published, together with Dr. Georgia Pliakou, some of the materials discovered in Episcopi. Moreover, I have recently started to study the transport amphora discovered in the excavation of some of the buildings of Castritza. This is a fortified city on the top of a hill on the southeastern margin of the lake Pamphottis in Ioannina. That was founded in the 3rd century BC and destroyed in 168 by the Romans, who later reorganized the site. I'm also studying materials for the walled citadel of Megalogardiki, located in the northern part of the Ioannina basin. The site dates back to the 3rd century BC and until the 1st century AD. Finally, from the Ioannina area, I have also included in my research all the transport amphora from the oracular sanctuary of Dodona. The sanctuary became irrelevant after 168, and although it had almost completely disappeared, the oracle continued to exist such as. From the western part of Epirus, the prefecture of Thesprotia, in which the Epirus of Antiquities, together with the Finnish Institute, have been developing lately a very important research project, my research includes the remains of transport amphora discovered during the 1996 excavations carried out at the Stoa of Gitana, as well as several interesting finds from Elea, Kefalochori, and Guriza. Furthermore, I have been studying the stamps collection discovered in the Hellenistic small fortification of Nicomandium that was destroyed also in 168, and also some amphorae of the 1st century BC from the city of Cassopi. Both sites are located in the prefecture of Preveza, but these specific materials are stored in the Museum of Ioannina. Given that my research is still in an early phase, instead of entering in specifications about each studied site, in continuation, I will briefly try to synthesize and present a general overview. Certainly, the largest volume of amphora imported in the region comes from the northwestern arc of the Adriatic Sea. Generally, the most common types we find are the classic Greco-Italic and the Lamboglia II ones. There is also a significant number of late Greco-Italic and others that are closer to Dressel I or Apani, of this kind of typologies for archaeologists. Likewise, there is also a considerable presence of Brindisi amphora. It seems that important role in the supply of transport amphora to Epirus was played by the Brindisi area, at least from the last quarter of the 2nd century BC and throughout all the 1st century BC. Moreover, although I have not yet been able to carry out an archaeometric analysis, the typology and visual characteristics of the fabrics of an appreciable number of amphora can be included in the so-called Ionian Adriatic group, in which Kerkyra could have played an important role. Others seem to come from different areas, also bathed by the Ionian Sea. Imports of Tyrrhenian amphora produced in the Vesuvian area has been also confirmed. However, they are very scarce. The present types are the common ones of the Roman Republican Italian wine amphora, the Greco-Italic, the Dressel 1A, and the Dressel 1C. But the unquestionable presence of Punic amphorae in Epirus is one of the most important aspects that this research is revealing. Although the number of remains is low, their identification is important, given that it had not been recorded or at least emphasized in the region previously. In the studied assemblages, I have identified 4 types of Punic amphora. 3 of them, which were produced in Carthago and or Punic Sicily, circulated between the mid-3rd century BC and the 1st quarter of the 2nd century BC. The main example of a cargo in which all these 3 types are present is the Carrera II shipwreck in Mallorca, which is dated to the late 3rd or early 2nd century BC. The 4th type of Punic amphora dates of a later period, and we will see later. More specifically, in the assemblages from Thesprotia, the presence of this first type of tubular amphora stands out because it is not common either in the Western or the Central Mediterranean. Recently, such amphora has been mentioned by Dr. Konstantinos Philis in a safely dated layer of the mid-3rd century BC at Voura in North Peloponnese. This type of amphora that were produced in Central Mediterranean, Tunisia or Sicily, have also been found in contexts dated in the late 3rd or early 2nd century BC in eastern Hispania, Gades, the Balearic Islands, Carthage, and Sicily. I have also identified this second type of tubular shape, which production started in the second half of the 3rd century BC in Tunisia, or maybe also in Sicily. This type is documented along the coasts of the Central and Western Mediterranean, and has also been identified in Athens. Amphoras of this type were recovered in the foundation layers of the Roman colony of Luni in Italy, dated to the 177 BC, and therefore they would have also circulated at least during the first 25 years of the 2nd century BC. Similarly, this third type of Punic amphora identified in the assemblages from Thesprotia also dates to the same chronological range. It is typologically related to the previous type of amphora and has been found in contexts safely dated to the early 2nd century BC in eastern Hispania, Carthago, Lattes in southern Gaul, and Pompeii, but it had never been mentioned in Greece before. Finally, the last and chronologically later identified remains of Punic type amphora are the Sicilian tubular ones. These were the more abundant type of the Punic tradition and probably became relatively frequent in the Epirus region. The presence of this type of amphora in the cargo of the Alistro 1 shipwreck in Corsica would date the beginning of their production at least to the first quarter of the 2nd century BC. In Corinth, this type has been attested in layers dated in the middle of the 2nd century BC. However, the amphora discovered in Ioannina and Thesprotia seems to be closer to forms of the late 2nd or early 1st century BC, according to the literature. In the farmstead of Episcopi, this type was recovered in context of the early 1st century BC and can therefore be safely ascribed to this later date. It is considered that this type of amphora of Punic tradition was produced in Sicily to transport fish derivates. One of my objectives is to be able to carry out analysis of the fabrics and contents of some of the remains discovered in Epirus. Regarding the Aegean amphora, these are scarce. Thus far, I have only verified the presence of Rhodian amphora. I have not yet carried out an in-depth study of the Rhodian stamps discovered in Epirus, although considering what has been published and the first appreciations during the inventory phase of my research, it seems that the arrival of the Rhodian amphora to Epirus would have been much more significant until 166 than afterwards. This fact could be related to the sanctions imposed by the Romans to the Rhodians in reprisal for their help to Perseus. However, this issue needs further investigation, and for the time being, this remains a preliminary hypothesis. A small amphora of clearly Greco-Italic cultural tradition that would have also come from Sicily has been attested in Episcopi. The closest and only parallels are two examples recovered for a shipwreck in Catania, where, similar to the amphora of Episcopi, were in a cargo of the early 1st century BC. At the same site, in the farmstead of Episcopi, a late Hellenistic amphoriscos was recorded, which can be associated with the Phoenician unguent industry. It is the commonest type of amphorisc in Phoenicia and northern Judea during the Hellenistic period, but this specific type is a specific shape dated in the 1st century BC. An outstanding aspect of the research is the recording and contextualization of a type of amphora that usually goes undetected in the excavations. These are the so-called Macedonian amphora. This specific family of amphora does not seem to have been manufactured for maritime transport, since they have not been recorded in any shipwreck. They probably constitute a local or regional ceramic production. Our plans are to carry out fabric analysis on some of the pieces to examine this issue. Our working hypothesis, at present under examination, is that these containers could have played an important role as elements for the regional redistribution of goods arriving in region by sea. A specific paper by Dr. Pliacu and myself that discusses the function and use of these finds is forthcoming. Well, I have tried to summarize the main typologies and provenance of the 2nd and 1st century amphorae that I detected in Epirus. But which were the points of entrance and the distribution routes of the traded goods? This is one of the aims of my research once the recording of materials has been completed. In this line, the location and role of harbour on the coast of Epirus is of relevance. In the study area, there would have been at least 3 ports capable of supplying maritime merchandising products to the entire region. However, little emphasis has been placed on the location and characterization of the main ports that would have been located on the coast of Epirus, because they were often located in areas of heavy silting and or considerable geomorphologic changes through time. Low archaeological visibility would be one of the factors that have probably hampered in-depth studies. The works of Dr. Barbara Papageorgiou in the Ladochori Roman town next to Igoumenitsa has recently brought to light the harbour town. However, despite the fact that the earliest phases may be dated back to the 2nd century BC, the findings and chronologies refer to Ladochori basically correspond to the imperial and Byzantine times. In this sense, as has already been appointed, this port area would be mostly related to the foundation of the Roman colony of Photiki by either Julius Caesar or Augustus. However, before the foundation of Photiki, an important port area in northwestern part of Thesprotia might have been more related to Gitana and the Thiamis River than to the area of Igoumenitsa, although this is just a working hypothesis. Further to the south, at the mouth of the Acheron River, is located Likis-Limin, that was mentioned by Strabo and other ancient authors, thus indicating that it was a well-known feature along the Epirot coast. More to the south was located the port of Anactorion Actio, whose importance in supplying goods to the Ioannina basin has been strongly demonstrated in Episcopi Farmstead. There, a group of metric weights related to the Actian weight values was discovered. It is therefore suggested that the Episcopi Farmstead would have played a role as a redistribution center for the products that arrived at the hinterland of Epirus through the port of Anactorium Actio, and possibly also to the Ambracia, whose port was also located in the Ambracian Gulf. Moreover, the information given by Livy that in 169 the consul Quintus Marcus Philippus arrived at Actium, but he disembarked in Ambracia, points to the possible connection of the 2 ports in the naval trade routes. Therefore, the study highlights the importance of the harbour of Anactorium Actium, probably Ambracia, before the foundation of Actia Nicopolis by Augusto in 28 BC. In conclusion, the transport amphora assemblages of the Hellenistic Epirus region may be representative of the commercial relationships that this area maintained in that period. The abundance of Adriatic containers in the chronologies we are talking about, the 2nd and 1st centuries BC, indicates that during these 2 centuries, the region must have functioned as a reception center for products from the central and northern Adriatic coast of Italy. In addition to the predominant Adriatic supply, Other amphora originating from the south of Italy and North Africa, Sicily, reached the Epirus, trading alongside wines from those areas, also other products such as fish sauces. This rare western trading route, together with the scarce presence of Aegean amphora, would indicate that basically the region of Epirus was immersed in a commercial network that was mainly supplied with Ionian Adriatic products. All the above under the unquestionable influence of the Roman Republic, interests and merchants, even before the Roman victory over Perseo. Likewise, all the products, mainly wine, oil, and fish derivatives, imported in the transport amphora we have been talking about, could have been redistributed and in amphora of local or regional production for land river transport from the arriving ports to anywhere in the region. Therefore, at least 3 main maritime supply routes could be established. One would collect products coming from the northwestern Adriatic arc. A second one, that probably starting from Puteoli, would distribute the products of southern Italy and Sicily. And a third route that would involve eastern and Aegean amphora, probably given their apparently low incidence and the quality of the products that they transported, their commercialization in Epirus would have focused on a more selective or elitist clientele. It could be. At least from 166 BC, this third route would have also been controlled or directed by Italic merchants' interests established in Aegean and especially in Delos. The amphora import in Epirus also shows that immediately after the vast destructions caused by Paulo Emilio in 167, the region maintained an important commercial activity. Nevertheless, this activity should be compared with the literature regarding the previous period to better understand the social and economic changes produced since the establishment of the Romans in the region after the Macedonian War and until the advent of the Principate of Augustus. In sum, I believe there are many interesting issues to be addressed by my research that will hopefully contribute to fill a hiatus in the study of the late Hellenistic periods and will provide evidence for a better understanding of the Romanization process in Epirus. Today, I have just tried to introduce my data and hypothesis into a kind of Pandora's box that I hope will bring new and favorable winds with a monography of the subjects. And that's all. Esto es todo. Gracias.
We have a couple of minutes, I think, still. Any questions for Professor Pascual?
Okay.
Was there any change in the trade before and after the destruction of Carthago?
Yes, I put 145 because it's a specific. Yes, it's a. But I'm still trying to contextualize all the remains I have. I'm now in this period. But of course, Carthago and Corinth after 145 is before and after, for sure. Okay.
No more questions? Thank you so much. So now we welcome Dr. Horacio González Cesteros.
Okay, thank you so much. Buenos días, Kalimera, good afternoon, buenas tardes. Thanks all of you for being here. for coming today to this workshop. I think it's kind of a special day for all of us, coming from Spain and developing research here in Greece. And I would like to thank especially to the Spanish Embassy in Athens, to the Ambassador Carles Maria Casajoana, to the director also of the Instituto Cervantes, Pilar Tena, and well, I think some of my colleagues already spoke about it, and later we are going to speak about how was the history of having a Spanish institute here. But I think this can be a first step in order to try to create a Spanish institute here. That is what we are wanting since some years. And I don't know the winning formula. I don't know how to do it, for sure. We have to do with CSIC, we have to do the universities. I have no idea. I deal with hundreds of thousands of pottery shirts in order to try to create economic and social history. Then I think it's the people in Madrid, who must decide how to do it and to have the will to do it. Then let's see, but I had to use the opportunity to say some words about it. And now I'm going to present my research in the Aegean, not only in Greece, but also in Turkey, of the last 12 years. Okay, thank you. So, as some of you already know, I have been working in Ephesus with the Austrian Archaeological Institute since 2010. My main research line has been focused in the Roman and Byzantine amphora, and I have to say with very good results, not because of my research ability, but of wonderful Ephesus. Ephesus is an incredible place for researchers, but also I have to say the Austrian Archaeological Institute have developed an amazing work since longer than 100 years in Ephesus, and is an example how to work, how to make research in a huge archaeological site such as Ephesus. However, due to my own research interest, but unfortunately also to the instability of the research permissions in Ephesus during the last years, hopefully this situation is going to change, and seems is the case since the last campaign in 2022. Well, I moved westwards, and I started to work also in Greece. First together with other scholars, and later having my own research line. Today, I would like to advance two of my projects. The first one is called Far From Home, Hispanic Commodities in the Roman and Late Antique Worlds. It's funded by the regional government in Madrid. And the second one is Crossing the Sea, a study of Asia Minor pottery in the Athenian Agora and its implications for commercial and cultural interaction in a Roman Aegean. This one is funded by the Austrian Science Fund and directed by me together with Alice Waldner from the Austrian Archaeological Institute as official partner. Both projects, as you can imagine, are based on the study of material evidence of economic, cultural, and social interactions between distant regions. In the first case, the Aegean and other parts of Greece appear as one of the main case studies. In the second, the Aegean coast of Asia Minor and the city of Athens are chosen for an in-depth study of their economical and social interactions. So let's start with Far From Home. This project is conceived as a tool for analyzing the interaction of the Iberian Peninsula with other Mediterranean regions, with the help of the archaeological materials found in the reception areas, in this case mainly in the Aegean and in Western Italy. This 5-year project is hosted at the Universidad Complutense de Madrid with a large number of Spanish and international collaborators. Some of them are today in this hall. Both projects are based mainly on pottery studies, but in Far From Home, other archaeological materials will be eventually included, as for example, the very interesting coins from Ibiza found in Campania, especially in Pompeii, studied already by Albert Rivera and his collaborators. Further, the kind of pottery or ceramic items that will be analyzed depends on the geographical area under study. For instance, if for the Aegean the material is mainly amphora, For other parts, like in Western Italy, we find also other kind of pottery items, as for example, in the 2nd and 1st century BC, Iberian pottery from eastern Spain. Equally, in Far From Home, the presence of metal coming from the Iberian Peninsula, in general lead ingots, will not be ignored. We are not specialists, for sure, in metals, my team and me, but we are going also to have it in mind, no? That pottery was not the only thing exported from the Iberian Peninsula, and I have to say the most important in antiquity was always metal, silver and lead. No? We have briefly mentioned the metal production, but we are all aware of the archaeological difficulties of metal and their scarce presence in the archaeological record. However, there are other branches of ancient economy that are somehow easier to follow. In this case, of the Iberian Peninsula, the most notable evidence of the richness of the land and the sea was the export-oriented agricultural production, mainly olive oil, wine, and fish commodities. These commodities were produced all around the Spanish and Portuguese geography, and the remains of presses and fish production tanks are all around our geography. The fish tanks are extraordinarily well represented all around the Atlantic and Mediterranean coast. No? As you can see in this project, the Rampa project, this map is already some years old. We have to add the discovery of new fish tanks, but what is important is that almost 90% of the study cases came from North Morocco and the Iberian Peninsula. As most of you already know, these 3 types of commodities were transported in big clay containers, known as amphora, and we have plenty of them produced in the Iberian geography and found in many different areas of the Roman and late antique worlds, with a special regard to the military markets in Western Europe and to the area of Rome, where we have the best archive of the extraordinary consumption of olive oil from South Spain in antiquity, the Monte Testaccio. It's an artificial hill built with millions of discards of olive oil amphora. Some scholars call the Testaccio the 8th hill in Rome. Here you have a good aerial view and a picture of the Testaccio in the mid-20th century when it was still free of greenery and there were no nearby buildings. And here, in the right picture, you can perfectly see the inside of the Testaccio with the amphora being placed carefully with assistant already know how they did it, and covered with lime for avoiding undesirable smells. This view, transmitted by Monte Testaccio of a vigorous agricultural economy based on exportation, is corresponded by the remains in the Iberian Peninsula. For instance, in the Guadalquivir and Genil valleys, where more than 100 kiln sites have been found. And I am not talking about small productive centers. We have huge kiln sites producing all around the year. We know they produce all the months of the year, even if some scholars, they don't believe it, but we have the epigraphic proofs of it, and export it all around the Mediterranean and to Northern Europe. If the diffusion of certain types of Spanish commodities during Roman period is more or less well known for Western Italy, and the challenges of the project in Italy are focused in certain moments or the amphora types that they are not so well known and other pottery items, for the Aegean the situation is different. And I am not exaggerating if I say some of us in this hall are the first who work on this topic in the last years, as you could see, for example, in the presentation of Professor Saez and Professor Fantucci. Well, in this project we are going to analyze different places in Asia Minor and in Greece, but also we are going to have in mind the recent discoveries of shipwrecks with Spanish material in the Aegean. And I can only thank Professor Koussouflakis for his help and support in this case with the data obtained by himself and his team in the last years. And I would also like to thank Mrs. Olga Marinaki, who just started the PhD about Spanish and African commodities in the Aegean in the mid and late imperial periods. She will be part of the team, and I am very happy already with the first campaign we have done in Ephesus, with the different material we have studied in Ephesus. Well, let's go to Ephesus. At present day, I can already show you some of the first impressions we have from the study developing Ephesus in the last 10 years. Previous works made by Thomas Metzeski, I have to say, was quite inaccurate concerning the Spanish amphora. A large vacuum existed regarding the exact types that arrived from the Iberian Peninsula, or the main percentages in the amount of amphora imports. In the last decade, part of my work has been focused in change the paradigm of these and other related topics in Ephesus. For example, I have also paid attention to some overlooked aspects of the amphora, such as epigraphy. Mr. Metzeski could document some stamps on olive oil amphora, and I have paid more attention to the ink inscriptions, the tituli picti or dipinti, who are always related to the trade process. Some of them have been of great relevance for the understanding of the commercial trends and routes between the Iberian Peninsula and the Aegean, emphasizing the relevance of the Italian merchants, in this case, Italian freedmen, acting as middlemen in this commercial dynamic between Hispania and the Aegean. An even larger vacuum existed regarding late antiquity, and the recent studies have clearly indicated that there are much more amphora of the 4th, 5th, and maybe early 6th century coming, above all, from Andalusia, from Malaga region and from other regions in Andalusia. We have found also some special productions from Malaga, such as imitations of some African types. However, Malaga was not the only Spanish region that imitated and exported African types to Ephesus. We have found also some unexpected types in the Ephesian record, such as productions from the Cartagonova area. Thanks to the great work of Alejandro Quevedo, this region is starting to be better documented in their own production sites, and I am sure we are going to find much more material from this area that we have already started to find in underwater finds in the Aegean. No? Together with Ephesus and some underwater finds, other sites must be considered as well. One of the most important is Corinth, the capital of the Roman province of Achaia, and a very important commercial hub dominating the transition from the Corinthian to the Saronic Gulf. A first overview about the Spanish commodities in Corinth, made by me, thanks to the collaboration of Julia Toussaint and Catherine Slane, and I am very grateful to the American team in Corinth, and I hope in the next years the collaboration will be even closer. Well, as I say, this first overview suggested that once again, different Iberian regions were sending their goods to Corinth. And for sure, we also analyze Athens, the Athenian Agora. Athens should not be missing in this presentation. The excellent collaboration with the American School of Classics, and especially with the Agora team, with Professor Camp, Professor Papadopoulos, and the whole team, with the always helpful Sylvie Dumont, no? This collaboration has made possible to start already in 2020 with the study of some pottery contexts, and further with the study of special types of wares, such as the Spanish amphora, that I have also analyzed in 2021 in the frame of a grant of the Austrian Academy of Science. In the Agora, I had the opportunity of work with a large number of complete or almost complete pieces, such as these containers coming from the area of Cádiz in Andalusia. But I have also found some amphora from Catalonia, from Tarraconensis, in this case also from the area of Ampurias, no? Almost in the border with France. The work in the Agora must be contrasted also with the work of other colleagues here in Athens. And I hope during the project we have the opportunity to work together also with Greek archaeologists working on amphora here. Obviously, this project is somehow linked with the project of my colleague and good friend Antonio Saez. No? As he mentioned this morning, I am part of his research team, and last year I was documenting some, for me very early, material coming from classical Olympia. No? The most obvious difference of both projects is the chronological frame analyzed. A good melting point of both projects will be to analyze the period in between these imports. No? The period between the late 4th and the 1st century BC. And the first work developed in this controversial period points out that we don't find too many amphora, too many wares coming from the Iberian Peninsula in these chronologies. Then we don't know if we are in front of an archaeological problem or there are other causes that we have to search also in the political and historical development of the Mediterranean. Well, now I hope I have some minutes for the second project, Crossing the Sea. In this case, the main protagonist of the project is once again pottery, but just from one place, Athens, well, from one specific site, the Athenian Agora. And the pottery to be analyzed came from a region that is not so far away as the Iberian Peninsula, such as the Roman province of Asia. No? The Roman province of Asia had a huge pottery production, we will see later, but mainly from the Hellenistic period until Byzantine period. In this picture, you can see the region around Ephesus, the Caister Valley, and the city of Seljuk. No? Ephesus and its territory were very fertile, and around the Caistros Valley, we have analyzed a lot of different production places for amphora. Ephesus was for sure the most important harbor in Western Anatolia, and probably acted as a central point for exports of other centers, something that has already been suggested for the marble commodities of the inland Anatolian area. On the other side, the relevance of the Athenian Agora for the pottery studies in general, and especially for those of the Roman period, must not be underestimated. The study of some of the most characteristic amphora from Asia Minor has its origins in the works of Marble Lang and Henry Robinson in the 1950s. And those amphora are still in the amazing depot of the Agora, where I could start also in 2021 comparing the context with other kinds of pottery items also from Western Asia Minor. One of the things I could notice during my stay in the Agora depot was that there were still many open questions regarding the small amphora produced in Asia Minor. The most obvious was that we didn't have only productions from Ephesus, but we have also from other areas that were very difficult to distinguish without the help of archaeometry. Because the area of, let's say, from Pergamon, more or less, to Miletos, the geology is quite similar, and sometimes we need to do petrographical analysis. Tamas Beczeski made an extraordinary work with these small containers and could see the most important production came from Ephesus from the late 1st century BC to the 7th century AD. He worked in the depot of Ephesus, where we have still most of the amphora he drove and published, no? But he arrived until the 6th century AD, and the latest works in Ephesus have pointed out that this production goes farther, goes to the 7th century, but with smaller containers. You can see in the picture, they have sometimes half a liter capacity, and they are really, really small, but they continue to be produced at least until the mid-7th century. However, the production of pottery in Asia Minor, the production for export of pottery in Asia Minor and in Ephesus, started much earlier, already in the Hellenistic period, where we have, for example, the first transport amphora with the stamps Nicandros. No? And it is from the late 2nd century that this production literally exploded. No? And we find pottery from Ephesus and other areas in Asia Minor all around the Mediterranean, including the Iberian Peninsula, the so-called relief bowls. In the Roman period, most of the pottery from Asia Minor was produced in the province of, in the Roman province, where we have large cities. You have to keep in mind, for example, for the 2nd century AD, some scholars have suggested more than 200,000 inhabitants living in Ephesus. However, some types, as the so-called Eastern Sigillata B, were also exported to other places in the Mediterranean. No? And for late antiquity, this production in the province of Asia, Roman Asia, continued. We have a lot of late antique pottery, mainly amphora, but also late Romancy from Foggia, cooking wares, in the Athenian Agora. Late antiquity will be a special focus of crossing the sea. We have to see how were the quantities, which production areas inside Asia Minor are participating in this exchange with Athens, and as I tell you, how long or how was the chronological frame of these wares here in Athens. The last works developed in Ephesus have pointed out that it was still a vigorous production center during the 7th century and AD. No? I am not going to talk today about the wonderful finds of this campaign, 2022. I am not the person to address. It's Sabine Ladstetter, the director of the Ephesus excavation, and Helmut Zweiger, the archaeologist who has excavated this year a wonderful contest with almost intact material dated in the first part of the 7th century AD. But I have to say, some years ago, 2015, we also excavate near the context excavated this year, a very interesting context with a similar chronology. It is a taberna in the center part of the city with a strong destruction level, no? Destruction horizon that we date in the 2nd decade of the 7th century AD. It means during the beginning of the confrontation between Persia and Byzantium. And as you can see in the picture, we found many complete vessels, and I hope we can publish soon this spectacular context, where we have found a lot of cooking wares from Foggia, late Romancy, that we know it was also exported to places like the Atlantic coast of Spain, as Adolfo Fernández knows very well. We find also the copies of Ephesus of these wares, or of the Meander Valley, but we have also found new types of pottery that at present date are only documented in Ephesus. Part of the project, Crossing the Sea, will be also search for this kind of wares in order to know if they arrive also to Athens. And what about the amphora? We have to say for these moments, we have also other types, not only the small containers I showed you before, produced in Asia Minor, that until some years it was thought that they were only produced in Samos, Rhodos, Kos, and other Greek islands. Now we have proofs that they were also produced in the continental coastal area. And to finish, I want to show you also this amphora called Late Roman 13, that are a transitional type from late antiquity to the medieval period. And we know they have been found in Ephesus. We have a local production. We are developing archaeometrical analysis, but we also find in the Athenian Agora, and we find some of them with imperial stamps, stamps of eparchs, no? That they are linked with the administration in Constantinople, but also with the military administration of the early Byzantine Empire. So, before finishing, I would like to say that, well, we are not only working with material coming from the Iberian Peninsula, no? We know quite well the production of Malaga. erosion of Cádiz, the Guadalquivir Valley, than we can find in distant places, such as the Aegean. But I hope this second project has shown you that if we will have a school here, we could also develop other kind of research, based also in other regions and in other topics. Then let's see if the next time we meet in one hall, we can say, okay, we already opened one Spanish school. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Professor González Cesteros? It seems like everything was perfectly clear.
Okay, thank you.
Great, so let me welcome now Professor Adolfo Fernández.
Espera, la pongo.
¿Qué es la de arriba?
Como no sea esta.
Bien.
¿Cómo se llama la tuya, Adolfo?
Counting.
Ah, está aquí, lo he hecho.
Vale.
PDF o PowerPoint.
Por, si funciona bien.
Muchas gracias.
Me quedo aquí ya.
Okay. Good afternoon. First, I would like to thank the Spanish Embassy in Greece and the Cervantes Institute for inviting me to be part of this meeting. Thank you very much. I extend also my gratitude to Horacio González for keeping us in mind. We don't have a project in Greece, but we are a part of one led by an American team that I will explain during my presentation. I have good news for you. I have only 20 slides, and I think 20 minutes maybe, or less maybe. Okay, in this case, the Spanish team works as part of the Lechaion Harbor and Settlement Land Project. This project started in 2016 and continues today. It is the result of a joint effort between the American School of Classical Studies of Athens and the Corinthian amphorae of Antiquities. The project is currently led by Dr. Paul Scotton, a professor in the University of California State, and Dr. Angela Zipkowski, professor in the University of Iowa. I want also to thank both of them for allowing me to show some not published data from Lechaion that will be published next year in Esperia Journal, I hope. For those that don't know Lechaion, it was a harbor, Corinth harbor, located in the Corinthian Gulf, several kilometers away from the ancient city of Corinth. It was one of the two harbors of Corinth, being the second one, Kenkerai, to Aegean Sea. In theory, Lechaion was the harbor for the western trade, and Kenkerai will be the port with the Eastern Mediterranean, in theory. The harbor had three outside dock areas, now as outer harbors, and inner dock area, entered through a channel. The inner harbor is currently filled with sand and stones, and it will probably be wider in Greek and Roman times, as we can see in this older map of the area shown in the screen. The archaeological works in Lechaion include excavation of a cemetery plot, the exploration of a Roman monument in the inner harbor, the analysis of Roman centuriation of the harbor, among others. One of the major excavation areas is the Christian Basilica that we can see on the screen. The archaeological works were conducted by the Greek Archaeological Service in the decade of the 50s. The results of the excavations have been published in several papers. The basilica is highly important for the Lechaion project due to many reasons. The structure is mentioned in several classical sources, like in Procopius and others. They write about a devastating earthquake that destroyed Corinth and its coast in 6th century AD. But none mentions in the site of Lechaion explicitly by name. It has been presumed that this earthquake and maybe subsequent tsunami destroyed the basilica. Verify this event is one of the main aims of the project. In 2013, started a Greek-Danish project to study the underwater Lechaion. And after, the Greek-American project begins, focused in the terrestrial harbor. To achieve these main goals shown in the slide, 3 different areas have been excavated between 216 and 218. 3 excavation seasons and other seasons after focusing other studies. The project realized also a geophysical survey that covers the majority of the site, or more correct, the west part of the closed site actually, and realized also several analytics and study, paleobotany, sediments analysis, numismatic studies, and others. One of the specialized studies is the analysis of the recovery ceramics. Hundreds of thousands of shards, maybe millions of shards, ceramic shards recuperated in the recovery in the site. Here we can see the 3 interventions areas. Discuss the results of excavation is not the topic of this presentation, but I will briefly explain what was recovered. An early Roman building was recovered in Area A. It had a portico that communicated with a street or a road, maybe. In late Roman times, with a new building, the area was used for food processing, as proof the presence of olive processing remains. In some minor sondage, the excavation arrived to Bronze Age and the Archaic period levels. In Area B showed also 2 phases, an early mid-Roman and another late Roman one. The earliest building will probably be used as a house, attending to the remains recovery inside. The building constructed over it is from late Roman times and seems to be a production and food processing area also. Finally, a Roman basilica from Roman period was excavated in the Area C. The first building with an apse, the inner apse, was later replaced by larger structure of Neronian Flavian times with an octal apse. This second building was renovated in the 2nd and 3rd century and reused with another function in the 5th century. The ceramic recovered in these areas was studied by the group of pottery specialists led by Dr. Paul Reynolds, researcher of ICREA of the University of Barcelona, one of the most important specialists of Roman pottery in Eastern Mediterranean sites. Leandro Fantuzzi, Joan Tusset, and myself and other students, American students, were the rest of the members of the team that worked with Dr. Reynolds. The team joined the project in 2017 and so far studied 300 contests from the Augustan period to the 6th century AD. Until 2022, we studied the material of the seasons 216, 17, and 18. Some of them part of important contests that will be published soon in the journal Hesperia. These are some of the main contests studied by Dr. Reynolds from 2017. The contest allowed to date the different phases of the site and the renovations of the buildings, mainly the late contest of use and destruction of areas A and B in this slide. In Area C, the early Augustan contest and the Neronian Flavian contest dated the basilica construction. The study achieved some of the main objectives of the project, like dating the destruction level of Lechaion in the mid, for the moment, the date is the mid of 6th century AD. This thanks to the study of the latest contest. From 2022, a new team takes over and will be in charge of ceramic study of the next 3 years, 2023-2025, the next 3 seasons of excavation of the project. The team, supervised by myself, is composed of other Spanish research specialists and like Alba Rodriguez Novoa, currently in University of Aarhus in Denmark, Joan Tusset from University of Barcelona, and Patricia Valle, currently in the Austrian Institute, Archaeological Institute in Athens, but all Spanish research, young research, more or less, Galician and Catalan research in this case. In this year, 2022, this new team defined the work methodology for pottery studies that will be used in the next excavations. It followed the same methods used in previous years, but including some changes for obtain better results, I hope. The material is washed every day in the site. This work is done by students under the supervision of the pottery team. Later, it is left outside for drying. Our first task, always with the collaboration of the students, is to separate the diagnostic shards from the rest of the pottery, like screen. This step is very important to allow a first approach to the contest. Later, we take general and in-detail photos. The second task is a quick study of the context, the spot date, already used by Paul Reynolds, of course. This provides a first provisional date for the contest. It is also the first record for each contest. The spot date allows also to select the most important contest, or those that are more interesting for the field archaeologist and their immediate needs. Finally, every contest is weighed and stored. Later, we work with the selected contest. There isn't always possible to study in detail the contest during the excavations. Therefore, this study is done later, sometimes next year or even years later. For example, this year we study 112 contests from the seasons of 216, 17, and 18. The contests are identified and all the shards counted individually. We take photos in detail of the most important ceramics to include these photos in the report and the future publications. Some shards are selected to be drawn and the drawing vectorized, all in the same period in the season. Thanks to this process, we have immediate results with content ready for its publication. This allows us to work with the field archaeologist and to be able to analyze economic and commercial dynamics in Corinth, thanks to the pottery contest of its harbor. Of Roman, late Roman times for now. Maybe the next years we can study also Greek contests also. What will we study the next years? The director's objective is to continue the excavation of areas A, B, and C. In the next seasons, the field team will excavate early levels in these 3 areas. But the geophysical survey detected important structural remains in other areas of Lechaion. In particular, in the northwest area, they discovered probably Greek walls below the Christian basilica and an important circular structure in a corner, and other different structures. This area will be excavated in the next years. We will study the ceramics in order to date these structures and define the supply patterns of the city of Corinth. Finally, the project supervisors asked the Greek authorities, amphorae, permit to study the pottery collection from the excavations in the Christian Basilica. We believe that the study of this collection will give us more precise data of the abandonment of the site. For now, our data verify the hypothesis of the final moment of the site in the middle of the 6th century for now. Actually, there is another date for the destruction of the basilica, and we need to verify this next year's this hypothesis. What is the moment of the destruction of the Lechaion harbor in mid-6th century, or later, like the hypothesis of basilica destruction, the Lechaion, if it's possible. And thank you very much. Thank you for your attention.